So if everybody could just do me a favor and just make sure that your microphone is turned off. And then you're gonna click my image right here. You're gonna right click and pin my video. So I'm at the top and I stay there since I'll be obviously the one talking through most of this. So go ahead and do that, mute yourself, and then just make sure that you right click on my video and pin it to the top so you can now see it. Okay, so I think we're going to get started here. Welcome and hello. If you don't know who I am, my name is Irene Yi and my pronouns are she, her, and I am joining you tonight from Chemehuevi, Tamok, and Southern Paiute home and ancestral lands, currently known as Las Vegas. And I will be sharing a slideshow tonight for you, which I will start now, and hopefully I'll have everything queued up for it here. All right, can everybody see that? Give me a thumbs up on your videos, just to make sure. All right, excellent. So usually this space is reserved for pro rock climbing athletes like Alex Honnold and Lynn Hill, and I can assure you that is not me. I am a person who loves climbing 5'8", which is considered a very low grade, easy climb. The only boulder problem I've ever sent outside is this really kind of awkward looking thing called the butt crack. My technical and athletic skills definitely leave a lot to be desired in this space. So who am I? Well, I am a professional rock climbing and adventure photographer.
And here we have at Lady Waka, hard at work. Got it.
But usually you'll actually find me here hanging on fixed lines, taking photos of rock climbing photography. I'm known mostly online as Lady Lockoff on Instagram, and I've been published in almost all of the major climbing magazines, and I work for companies like the North Face, Mountain Hardwear, Marmot, Outdoor Research, and organizations like the Access Fund, the American Alpine Club, and the Honnold Foundation. And really what I'm actually best known for is making 5'8" look really freaking cool. And so easy climbs looking cool, that's my jam. I absolutely love this. So now I know we're all currently in a tough time for a variety of reasons, and many of us have made the choice to stay in, stay local, or stop climbing at all. And so I just want you to know this presentation is not to make you feel bad, but to kind of get you excited to know that there is hope and adventure out there, and hopefully you have a few more things to get excited about and put on your tick list. So I am now going to take you through 3 of my favorite climbing places of all time. So we are going to pack up and hit the road, which actually for me is not really true because we're just going to my hometown of Las Vegas, where I already live. But I'm going to take you here and show you, my backyard, which is Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. And for you folks on the East Coast, if you're used to lush and perhaps maybe this desert barren thing doesn't really look that great to you, well, let me tell you, the sunsets are phenomenal out here. And if for some reason that still doesn't float your boat, I can tell you that the sunrises are equally just as amazing. I went out about 4 days in a row to make sure that I could get this photo correct. And so I woke up at 5 a.m. for 4 days, and I just got to watch this orange light just come down over this rock formation, which only happens at early in the morning. And even though I am not an early riser, I really highly do recommend that maybe you get up just once, because it is probably one of the most beautiful things I've seen out here. So I started climbing Las Vegas about 7 years ago. And as you can see, I still enjoy climbing here today, 7 years later. There's plenty of things to do. There's a ton of rock climbing out here, and most of the stone that you can climb on here is sandstone, which produces a variety of textures like the Wacos you see here, these beautiful face climbs with chips and little edges. We have a variety of size cracks, including very small cracks that only you can stick the tips of your fingers in. And then, of course, just rock on large holds, which really make you feel great about life because you can hold them, you can step on them, and you can actually breathe a little bit. Now, one of the things that I find unique about Las Vegas is that it has the 3 disciplines of climbing so dense and close together, which you usually don't find in most areas. Either these are more spread out or you heavily only find one of the disciplines, like 1 or 2 of the disciplines. But in Las Vegas, you actually get to enjoy 3 all in really close proximity together. The first is bouldering, which if you know nothing about rock climbing, you can totally tell it's all about these rad outfits right here and nothing else. There's also sport climbing and also traditional climbing. So first off, bouldering. This is a premier bouldering area. Mainly people love it because the approach is about 5 to 10 minutes on flat ground, which we all love a very short hike in to get to climbing. And bouldering is the form of rock climbing where a climber climbs a sequence up a usually short boulder. And the gear that is used for this is just a landing pad, those kind of square things that have backpack straps, a landing pad on the bottom in which to catch your fall or that you can hop down to safely to kind of make the ground a little bit softer. It also is a very social activity because it usually includes some spotters to actually make sure that you land on that bouldering pad that you put down. So Craft Boulder Field has a number of boulders here, everything from V0, which is the easiest grading scale of that, to V10 plus, which is definitely on the harder side. And here's one of the climbs here. It's called the Wave. You actually traverse to the left side of it with your feet hooking onto the side of the rock. And then on the right here, we have something hard because, you know, I photograph a lot and I don't remember. And really bouldering is like the Hufflepuff of climbing. So, you know, I don't really remember a lot about it like other folks. And we also have classics out here, such as the Pearl. And kind of the unique spot of this is like the hardest move is to just simply actually get onto the bottom of the climb. Everything is so tiny and kind of worn away that is one of the most difficult moves, is to just get your feet up off the ground and onto the climb. And if you're really, really careful, you might find some desert llama to be part of your landing pad and give you a nice soft surface for you to fall down on when you come off the rock. Now, if any of you have followed me, you know that this was like my hobby during quarantine, with so much time and kind of not another creative outlet because we had to stay indoors and we couldn't go rock climbing. I kind of channeled all of that into photoshopping different sorts of like soft landing pads, usually some sort of animal like a sheep, onto it. And that's kind of how I creativity like kept myself going through quarantine. So now you can't talk about craft boulders without one of the largest boulders out there. This is like the iconic plumber's crack. And for usual boulders, they're used to like climbing the face, which is like the front of the rock. They're usually not used to climbing a chimney like this. So even though this goes at a low grade, the V0 grade, it's actually kind of surprising watching people climb this because they find it really difficult to kind of get the fear away as they climb up this chimney of a boulder. And, you know, as a photographer, I don't want just the same angle that other people have. So this is the view from inside of that crack, actually looking out. So I shove myself in there with the climber. And if you think sometimes photographing is hard, like try to do it with all your limbs like shoved in, where you can like barely reach the buttons because you're kind of all jammed in there yourself. But, you know, that's okay, because guess what? I enjoy that kind of thing. These awkward, weird boulder problems, they kind of go wide. But the reason I really love them is because, you know, if you are trying really hard and you just need to come off of it, like no broken ankles, you just stick a foot down and you're back on the ground pretty safely. Though, as you can tell, sometimes you do need a friend because you're a bit stuck in that crack. So, sport climbing, for those of you who are sport climbing, this is definitely the place for you. We have some premier sport climbs here on the Red Rock Sandstone. Sport climbing involves bolts and hangers that are already pre-placed and permanently in the rock. And what you do is you take a piece of climbing gear called a draw, which has 2 carabiners on either end. And one of those carabiners goes into the hanger, and one of those carabiners you clip your own rope into, and it keeps you safe. So if you fall, that is your safety system. Your rope and carabiners will catch you. This was actually recently on the cover of Climbing Magazine. It's one of the most aesthetic, to me, climbs out here. This is Maisa climbing Fresh Air, which is this beautiful erect climb, which, as much as it doesn't seem like it, is mainly about technical thinking and creatively making your way through these moves rather than muscling your way through them. Now, don't be phased. There are hard climbs. There are also easy climbs out here. We have plenty of moderate climbs for all levels of people to get on. This is the Hamlet Wall, and it's beautifully scenic. It's got, you know, a kind of 10-minute slight uphill, but mostly flat approach, and is great for climbers at newer levels who are just touching rock for the first time. For those of you progressing in the grades of rock climbing, we have wonderful kind of 5-9 through 11A sport climbs here, which are equally as beautiful and texturally interesting. And for those people just looking to crush it out here, we have plenty of hard stuff out here too. The Prophet, which is the photo on the left, is a 12B, and it's actually on one. It's kind of like on a large boulder that is almost at completely 45 degrees overhanging, which is some of the hardest stuff to climb because you're pretty much fighting gravity the whole time. And then on the right, we do have Monster Skank, which is unique in that it has several dynos where you actually have to come off the rock, jump, and kind of hit the next handhold. And it has multiple of those moves on it. And then, of course, if you're just looking to come here and photograph and not even climb, that's perfectly fine. What's great about Red Rock is a lot of these rock climbs you can actually see from the ground pretty well, and it actually has nice high sides, so you can just hike up kind of casually on the side and still get really great photos without even having to be on a fixed line after all. And of course, our golden hour is just absolutely spectacular. Now, for all you rad trad folk, Vegas has some of the most moderate trad and densely packed moderate trad that you'll ever find. So if you want to climb nothing like me, but 5'8" for the rest of your life, this is the place where you should come. Trad climbing, or traditional climbing, is where you place protection, usually what they call cams or nuts, into the cracks of the rock. And you clip into those pieces of protection to protect you and keep yourself safe from a fall. And then the gear is usually taken out by your second or your follower to make sure that nothing essentially is left behind in the rock. This is actually one of the newest climbs that, not that I discovered, but I recently was on. It's called Sandy Hole 5-6, a very low, easy, fun trad grade. And as you can see, it just has really, really cool texture, which you get to climb through, which is like something that really excites me about multi-pitch climbing. There's also plenty of other multi-pitch, popular solar slab, which is kind of a lie because it definitely goes into the shade by 2 p.m. So don't get too wrapped up into that. And then also you should know what's kind of unique about Red Rock sandstone is that it doesn't quite crack as nicely as other sandstone where it's kind of straight and deep and kind of even. Here, you're usually placing your protection into the crack and climbing on the face, which is kind of unusual for trad, but kind of a usual thing here in Red Rock. And then, you know, no matter what you climb here, the views are absolutely stunning and spectacular. It's some of the prettiest scenery I've ever seen. Usually it's pretty clear, so you can actually see pretty far to the city and then also away from the city as well. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit more invigorating in the trad realm, there are plenty of very hard trad climbs here. This is called the Great Red Roof. It is a 513B, which is actually a pretty expert level as it goes to trad climbing here. This crack actually, instead of kind of cracking open, it kind of is an overlapping crack. And so by the end of it, your feet just kind of come down and you just have to muscle your way out to the lip to get up and over. Another 513 crack here is called Desert Gold. The roof part is actually the easier part of it. And the hard part is actually starting it. So down here, you can actually see that this crack dwindles down into nothing. And so it's that lovely balancing maneuver of like how tall you are versus how big your fingers are, right? And you're trying to get into that crack as quickly as possible with very, very, very few things to start out with. Okay, and we cannot, of course, talk about Red Rock without my absolute favorite climb out here. This is called Chrysler Crack. It is an off-width crack, which means it is a crack, anything that's larger than your own fist, but smaller than a chimney, and chimneys where you can get your feet out in front of you. And as you can see, this is a full body crack. You can't quite get your feet out in front of you. And so that's kind of, it's a little bit of a squeeze. And I actually, obviously as before, I really like that kind of climbing. It's definitely a subset of rock climbing, off-width climbing. It's not for everybody. A lot of people avoid it as much as they can because it is like a full body workout, and scrapes and bruises are just kind of part of that style of climbing. But before quarantine, I actually used to come out here about once a week and I would just run a fitness lap on it. And of course, with me, I would always take some friends and hang on a fixed line to photograph them. Which you can actually see here, which perhaps it's just the fact that maybe I'm a little bit mean and I really like to hang and watch other people suffer, which is why I always suggest my friends come up here. But really, I mean, the faces are just priceless. Watching kind of other people suffer is kind of funny, even though usually I'm very encouraging. But it's a definitely different kind of climbing, and it's always excellent to get people who are really strong kind of on something that they're just like, this is so different and new. And then of course, you know, off-width climbing does come with a different kind of trad climbing gear. This is a lovely 2x4 that one of the people who also climbs this regularly actually specifically cut for this crack because it's so wide that it's really hard to protect. So you can see how Mary feels about this type of protection, which is simply a 2x4, very roughly engineered for the purpose of safety.
Go on an adventure, they said. It will be sunny, they said. It will not be cold, they said. That is bull.
So it does snow in the desert, and this is currently what Las Vegas looks like right now. Although it was kind of like almost beautiful. I think it was almost 70 today, so it probably had a lot of melting effect on the snow. But really what that means for Las Vegas specifically is that different places have different practices, and it's up to you to know what those are and figure them out. You should not climb wet sandstone. And pretty much that is because when the rock gets wet, it loses up to 75% of its strength, making it unsafe to climb. It is also considered very poor form to rip off key holds, which would have been preventable if the rock was dry. A lot of debate is about this because it's really tricky to actually tell when the sandstone is dry, as the temperature, amount of rain, amount of sun, time of year can all impact how it dries. So it's up to you to make an educated and informed decision about whether it's dry or not and whether you should climb on it or not. Things you can ask yourself are, is the sand wet? Because it's the thing loose at the base, and that's probably going to be the first thing to dry out. How much did it rain? How cloudy was it? What time of year was it? These can all help you kind of make that informed decision. And it is always the better and safe choice to choose not to climb than make the rough decision to climb and then potentially harm yourself and then harm the rock, which we really want to keep there for everybody to enjoy. But if it is wet, there are plenty of other places around Las Vegas that you can go that is not particularly red rock. This is called Big Sandy, which is a volcanic tuft kind of rock, and is perfectly safe to climb when wet or after it has rained. There's plenty of limestone around Vegas, easily accessible, especially up at Mount Charleston. And this is where we go in the summer when it's 110. It's usually at least 10 degrees colder up there. And so there's plenty of limestone that we can climb on. And if you need to get your trad on, this is just north of Las Vegas and called Rainbow Canyon, which has some really interesting stuff itself. It's similar to Smith Rock, which I also believe is a basalt. But hey, this is Las Vegas. There are plenty of things to do here if you cannot climb. The food is super good. There's plenty of little places. Everything is open in here, and you can definitely find things that are socially distant that you can still go to. Just make sure that you look to make a reservation, because most places just need a reservation in advance. Please remember that Red Rock Canyon sees over 3.5 million visitors a year. And so it's really important to make sure that whatever you bring in, you make sure to bring out. And right now, currently, it's actually better if you could bring at least one other thing out with you, as the trash problem is really getting way more noticeable, especially on all the trails. It's important to stay on designated trails. The desert is a fragile environment, even though it doesn't look like that, and perhaps it's barren or devoid of foliage. Actually, the foliage has a really tough time growing here, and so you should respect the hard time that it has by not crushing it, staying on designated trails. Also, this craft trail was recently diverted because of property lines out in Calico Basin, and it is an access issue when people stray off the new trail that was made and head over these rock barriers and head onto a trail that we should no longer be using. Dog poop is definitely a big concern out here. I always say, if it doesn't grow out here naturally, do not leave it here. So things like dog poop, banana peels, clementine peels, even though they are thought process biodegradable, they do not belong in a desert environment, which can be incredibly fragile and just cannot break down waste products like that. So, everybody still with me? Everybody good? We're going to pack up next and head to Vidavoo, Wyoming. And of course, you know, we can't have a road trip without a little singing in the car, because that's the only thing that usually keeps me awake on my long road trips. So, right, I already told you that I love this kind of off-with style, gravelly, hard climbing, right? We kind of already established that. So there is no better place to do that than in Vidavoo, Wyoming, which is like the mecca of off-with climbing. And this has definitely been my happy place for many summers. If you couldn't tell, it's absolutely beautiful. The rock here is granite, so it's a little bit different style of rock. It's actually kind of like an orange granite, which can either be really slick, or pretty much like, we call it kitty litter, where it just kind of, you like touch it and it just kind of just disintegrates under your fingers. But usually after you get past that layer, it can be pretty solid. It's also incredibly sculptural. Like, it's such a weird thing to have in the middle of Wyoming, but the formations there are just absolutely beautiful. And they're covered in this just vivid and bright colored lichen, which I just can't get enough of. I think it's such a pretty place. Usually the season for this place is kind of like late spring to early fall, definitely a summer venue. And as you can tell, the approaches are just so dreary to go through, but the approaches can really be about 5 minutes to a few hours, depending on the area that you're heading to. And so I absolutely love this place, mainly because it really lends right to like my style of climbing. The climbing here, to say, is very weird. It's definitely not always vertical and definitely requires some funkier moves on everybody's part. It's also known, we call it a sandbag, when the climb is actually harder than what its professed grade is. Kind of like the fun campfire story that people tell about the people who first established these routes, is that somebody would establish a route, come back to the campfire, give it a grade, and then everybody would downgrade it until somebody laughed out loud, and that was the grade. So a lot of the climbs here, even though they say 10B or C, are probably one grade higher than that. So you should be prepared for that. There's also some really ridiculous problems out here, like this boulder problem that Ashley is on. It's like just a shelf of granite, and your goal is just to kind of like shuffle around the side and kind of be able to stand up on that shelf by the end. And I will tell you, if you are too tall, you cannot even attempt this climb because your butt is just on the ground. Really, the crux of this is just keeping your butt off the ground. But when you fail, it's okay, because it's right there beneath you to catch you. Inverting is something that is incredibly common here. And inverting means you have your feet above your head and you're jamming your feet into the cracks instead of your hands, usually because they fit better and it's a slightly better technique and more restful to be on your feet than on your hands. And it's kind of a balance between jamming your feet and jamming your hands to be able to move up the crack here. Now, this also comes with its own issues, right? Getting stuck is definitely one of those things that you have to anticipate. And as you can see here, Danny actually had to take off his shoe to be able to get out of this particular rock climb. And that is not an uncommon thing to happen here in Vitaville. And truly, like I said, again, this is not for the faint of heart. It is a full body workout, and bruises and scrapes are kind of like the trophies of your effort of trying. It just comes with the territory. It's about you and the rock. But not all the climbs are really terribly hard, I promise. There are many awesome moderate climbs. This one is called Anita, and pretty much the crux is just like dealing with the amount of bird poop that's on it and just giving into the fact that you will be going through it, and that is how you complete this climb. There's also a lot of intro off width to this. This is called Mother One. It is a 5.7 plus. So if you're just looking to start out, there are some low angled climbs that make the off width experience just a little bit easier. But honestly, if you want to beat your body up, I mean, hey, there are plenty of test off width pieces out here. One aptly called the Iron Maiden, where you are just trying to shove yourself in the crack. Most of the time, the cracks are just trying to spit you out, and it's just you and your effort about using your body to shove it in there and keep yourself in here. You can see Danny on Lucille here. He's one of the premier off width climbers in the US, and this is called the double chicken wing. I cannot do this. He has double jointed shoulders, so that's definitely something that's really positive in the off width climbing space. And it's definitely a slight great effort. But you know, that is what Vitaville is all about. It's kind of a struggle bus. That's what you come here for. You should be prepared that you probably will go get on one climb a day. Usually with most other places, you're getting on multiple climbs, you're doing multiple pitches. Vitaville is all about banging your head against one climb and really feeling the effort for that for about the next 3 days. So just know if you come here, it's about one climb a day. And you know, this is a humbling place, and like the defeat is real. This is like a normal thing for you to try one climb and not get it and spend, you know, possibly your entire time here. But you know, that's all part of the climbing process, and it's incredibly humbling, you know, to fail kind of over and over again. But as painful as this place can be, it's also something that kind of brings you together because you're all kind of suffering in different degrees. And there's something about that that just brings people together as a community, that you're all kind of in the collective pain together. And really, like, I think I love this place because it really taught me, you know, good times with good friends. There's a lot of, again, low ball, right, close to the ground boulder problems here, which after you've done your one climb for the day, you kind of just hang around. It's like the hang spots where people get to try new and different techniques without, you know, the whole climbing gear arrangement. But usually it's just a fun time cheering on friends.
Nobody's on it. We're just too lazy and tired to move.
As you can see, the climbing here is really accessible. It's dispersed. There is a campground, but it's mostly dispersed BLM camping. So you can kind of just pull over to close to those boulder problems and just kind of hang out and camp. And that's something, this was from my very first trip here. It's something that really lends to the social style that is obviously the challenge of off-width climbing, is that it is incredibly social. And here we're playing a card game where you actually like slap because you're trying to get as many cards as you can. And I will tell you, after climbing multiple cracks and having the backs of your hands kind of bloody, having 3 people continually slap those as hard as they can is not all too pleasant. But really, what my experience in Vita Vu taught me is that, to me, climbing is really about community. It's really about the people that I have met along the way and getting to spend time with them and have fun with them. Essentially, climbs are climbs. They'll never change. They'll always be the same. But the difference is the person who is climbing them. And that, I realize, is such a pillar of climbing photography for me. It's not about the climbing. It is absolutely about the people. And of course, the better friends you make, the more ridiculous things you can ask them to do, like this photograph, which really was my brainchild, and I just really wanted to have fun and kind of show off our little off-width crew. And so, you know, the more they like you, the more things that they'll just agree to, including heading on an international trip together. So let's pack up and head to right here, Liming, China.
I'm sure when you think of China, you think of limestone square climbing. But we came here for the off-road.
So as you can see, obviously, we chose this place because of the off-widths that it has. So it's a little bit involved to get into Liming, which pretty much is, depending on where you are, it's about 2 to 3 flights, totaling about 15 hours in the air, a bus ride, and then an overnight train, and then another minibus.
Oh, it's been a long journey in the back of this minibus. It's hour 50. We're ready to meet now.
And so after about 50 hours of traveling and a complete flip-flop of time zones, we arrive here in Liming, China. Here you can actually see the little village of Liming. We stayed probably right about here. And this place is just completely surrounded by these beautiful walls, kind of all 360. And here it is home to the Lisu, Nashi, Yi, and Han peoples. And they have been here for generations. This is actually a ladder that goes up to, I want to say a beehive, but that's not true. I call it the bee cave. And I just cannot help about thinking about the tenacity of somebody who is like, I want honey. Let me build a stick ladder and go up towards millions of bees to get it. And so this ladder has actually been here for generations, much even before the people who currently live there. They remember it being there much longer before that. So here the walls are sandstone, similar to desert sandstone, but with a little bit of differences, obviously, because it's so lush underneath. This is probably one of my favorite walls that I have ever seen. This is called the Painted Wall for good reason. It's got these beautiful water streaks down it. And I actually got this picture on my second time in China because I just felt I didn't do it justice the first time, and I wanted a picture of this just absolutely beautiful wall. And of course, we came here for the off-width, and there is off-width here aplenty. A lot of the arches in this place are actually climbable, something that usually doesn't happen in the desert. And I don't know if you've seen or not, but if you can find the climber in this photo, it's Danny. This is his foot right here, and you can kind of see how deep those cracks go. And on the first trip, Dana and Ashley really wanted to establish a first ascent, so a new climb. And so they found one of these beautiful climbable arches and put up over the rainbow, which is a trad climb that you see here. Now, no trip would be complete without some newer folks, and we got to meet Ryder here, who also just established a new first ascent. And so he was super excited to give us a little tour of it and get some off-width climbers' perspective on it. The first pitch is a sport pitch, which, as you can see for Ashley, who is an off-width climber, she was really, really psyched to be able to get up this pitch. The second pitch is just full on off-width. And so about 800 feet up, the third pitch, which we call the crux pitch or the hardest pitch, climbs this beautiful flake, as you can see here, and that's kind of the hardest part of the climb. Now, Ryder chose to do a rock climbing move, which we call a lie back. So pretty much you have your feet flat against the wall, and it's kind of counter pressuring your hands, which are along a piece of stone, and your arms are straight, trying to like balance out and move along that way, which really kind of makes the cam placements a little blind. Again, he climbed this a few times and sent it right before we went up it. So he kind of knew what was going on there. But of course, Danny was like, well, I can invert that. Let me try that. And so you can see how like you can do lots of different climbing moves for the same thing. But later, Danny did concede that probably a lie back was less effort than trying to invert through the whole roof like he did. So if you thought those moves were crazy, you're going to check out something else. Okay, so now we're going to have a little fun. Since everybody's at home, everybody's going to grab their cell phone, right? You're going to log onto Instagram. You're going to go to the little discover button here, and you're going to type in Lady Lockoff. And what you're going to do is you're going to click on my profile, which looks right like this, and you're going to click on my picture here. And what that's going to do is you're going to see a little message that says, hey, Teton County Library, swipe up here. I want you to swipe up here and look at that video. If you do not have your phone, that's okay. I just put the link to it in the chat. So if you don't have Instagram, no worries. You can just view this for free on your phone. So go ahead and do that. And you can see the kind of the video that we're going to get here. If you can't do that, let me see if I can actually bring it up here for you. Let me exit out of this. And I will bring up that link just in case for everybody to see. Okay, this really cool move that we have in Li Ming. So I'm going to show you this video. As you can see here, this climb is called Eagle Eye Super Hawk. Very aptly named. This is not a usual rock climbing move. This is kind of unique to this area and something that I've never seen before. And it looks just as scary. And it probably, I haven't tried it, but the people that I saw try it probably feels about just as scary as that climb did. So we're going to go back to our presentation here. All right, everybody have that? Give me some thumbs up there if you can see. Excellent. Okay, now, not all things are as crazy as the stuff that I just showed you. Li Ming is kind of known for harder trad climbing, so just be aware of that. But there are a few more moderate climbs. This is called the Great Owl. I actually had the pleasure of sending this the last time I was there in 2019. It starts off as a thin finger crack and then opens up to a beautiful hand crack to the chains on this climb, and is on kind of slightly a pillar that is away from the rock. But of course, there is absolutely more than just off with climbing here.
We're seeing you, not the screen share.
Okay. Let me see if I can. There we go. Are we good now? Back on the screen share, back on the presentation. Awesome.
It's good.
Okay, so right, here we go. This is the Great Owl, right? That awesomely fun thin crack that goes into beautiful hands. And then there's plenty more than off with here. There's plenty of finger cracks. And as you can see from before, there's actually a nice climb right next to that ladder to get to the beehive here, which I think the first time we were there, you could actually hear the buzzing of bees, and it was a little intimidating to be that close to that many bees. There's also this climb. It's incredibly aesthetic. This is called the Firewall. I think it's actually on the picture of the guidebook for Li Ming. It is 3 pitches, the first being kind of an easier, but it's more of an approach pitch, just something kind of to get through. It's not really that great, and it's definitely covered in stinging nettles. I can attest to that. To this second pitch, where it has kind of alternating cracks, and you kind of climb all of them as you ascend up. And then the last pitch, maybe about, I'm honestly not sure how many feet up in the air that we were, but it is a finger crack, and it again is overhanging. So you're just hanging on your fingertips and like the tips of your toes, and that makes this kind of get the really difficult grade of 513D. And don't worry, if people are sport climbers, sport climbing is coming to Li Ming, so no worries about that. This area was brand new and being put up when I was there in 2019. This is called El Dorado. You can see that people are still kind of finishing bolting and working the moves on this climb. So sport climbing will definitely be in Li Ming if that is your sort of thing. Just know that generally the sport climbs definitely run in a 511 plus grade. This climb here that you see is actually a 513. Okay, now I have to admit that I would never have picked China for my first international trip. It really scared me. Mainly because I'm Chinese and I don't speak the language, and I had a lot of cultural guilt associated with that. And I knew that people would be looking to me and speaking to me, and I would have no idea what they were saying. But what was really interesting that in my trips to China, it kind of had the reverse effect on me than I thought it would. I was able to kind of experience and submerge myself in my heritage, and it actually made me more curious about it rather than shy away from it. I felt that I could like connect in small ways that I hadn't realized. This is a park in Kunming, and like parks are kind of a very social, cultural experience where people come and they just bring their own sound systems and just dance, right? And they either dance individually or together in groups in traditional dances. And I was really surprised that this kind of brought back memories of being in New York City and having this kind of cultural thing in the US, in Chinatown in the New York City. And that was just so kind of, you know, realize how like deeply rooted that culture was there. And then of course, also, as most of our cultural associations are, it's kind of the food. You know, I realized making dumplings is a family affair always. This is the people of one of the restaurants that we kind of ate at a lot, making dumplings. And it's just like a communal activity. You know, you got to stuff a lot of dumplings, you might as well do it together. And, you know, I never kind of realized and appreciated how my mother sucking the eye out of a fish at the end of the meal could so deeply connect me to the roots of who I was. Rather than scoff at the differences of food in China, I actually felt really comforted by it. And of course, there were some like slightly bizarre things too, right? Chicken feet were normal, but like pickled single serve chicken feet, like that was a little bit new for me.
Irene, Danny bought something. It freaked him out. I'm not freaked out. What is it?
Oh, it's delicious. It's something on a stick.
It's got some bones in there.
What you guys, it is dog training.
So I encourage you that whenever you go to a new place, that you actually explore it. Take a few extra days off from whatever your original intention of being there was, and look around and take in all the little details and the small scenery, and just realize the new place that you're in. You know, walking around China, I definitely was like, wow, I can feel the like thousands of years of history here, something that I had never really felt in the US. And really force your group to take time off from whatever they're doing, especially if you're on a climbing trip, because essentially what we were doing in Liming, which was like climbing wide cracks on sandstone, is exactly what we were doing in the Utah desert. So really the difference is that we were halfway around the world. And especially on my second trip there, I forced them to take even more days off so we could actually explore the place that we had come halfway across the world to be in. This is probably one of my favorite things from our last trip. We kind of were at a different tourist attraction that just happened to have this geological museum there. And nobody else was in it. It was just solely us. And like, you know, I believe in science and dinosaurs, right? But like seeing this fossil, which was a prehistoric being, like the scale of it and just purely being able to see it, I was like, dinosaurs are real, right? We get exposed to these wonderful different things that we just never knew would resonate us in our like kind of current adult lives. So I hope you're inspired by this presentation. And if you're sitting there thinking that, wow, none of this is for me, I just want you to know that adventure and rock climbing is for everyone. We come in all different shapes, colors, abilities, bodies, and genders. And climbing can be whatever you want it to be. And we all deserve the right to adventure and explore ourselves through that medium. So stay safe, make good, educated, intentional choices that are right for you, because guess what? You got this.
Yay.
All right.
Yay! That was
Get out of this.
wonderful.
Right on time here. We do have time for a little Q&A. I just want to thank Teton County Library so much for having me and making me part of this year's festival, which is awesome that it's online, because I feel like it can kind of reach some folks that it never had before. And as you can see, my family is mostly on this call, so They're here too, but I invite you to go into gallery view and unmute yourself and show your face if you like to, if you feel comfortable, and feel free to ask me any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. That was so wonderful. Yeah, so anybody feel free to ask questions.
What's been your favorite climbing experience so far?
I mean, I think I just did a whole presentation about that. No,
Let
I'm
us
kidding.
three. Narrow it down.
I mean, for me, climbing is more about having fun, being outdoors, and being with friends. So as long as it checks those 3 boxes, it's probably like every climb I do, because like for me, climbing is not about climbing hard. It's just about experiencing those 3 things. And so everybody's climbing journey is a little bit different. So as long, as we're outdoors, we're having fun, nobody's freaking out, then to me, that's a good day. We're back in time for tacos by 5.
Irene, I was in awe of your presentation, the beauty of the places you selected. I mean, this opened my eyes. I've heard of rock climbing, but I never imagined all the things that are involved, the beauty of it, the positions, the color of the rocks, the differences in the rocks, the nature connection is just amazing. But because I'm in an older body, I keep thinking, do you young people have to do yoga in order to condition your body to get in these positions that only with yoga I can, manage to do daily?
I will tell you that you absolutely do not need to do yoga to do rock climbing. But I will say, I climbed my best when I was also doing yoga. So, right? Rock climbing, there are plenty of ways to rock climb. There are plenty of things that are easy and fun and really don't require a lot of what people think is muscle, right? It's a lot about just learning to do something different. And you can absolutely rock climb, be safe about it, do it at a low grade, and just do it for fun. And so I encourage everybody, I'll never have tendons of steel. That's, I'm a little too old for that. I didn't grow up with that. But, there are many different forms of rock climbing, and you can definitely take it at low and slow and have just as much fun as everybody else who's taking it a little bit further who wants to.
Thank you.
Okay, Irene, Mom wanted to know that move, that spread eagle move, that leap.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get back?
You have to go up. You have to finish the climb, or you leave in your piece. Sorry, my camera will turn back on. You have to leave in your piece of gear and kind of bail, right? Your option sometimes is always leave the gear, pay for it later. It's better to come down safe. But after that move, you gotta make it up to get your gear back. So you kind of have to finish at that point. Or you have a photographer above you who can take out that piece of gear for you, which is why you should always invite us along.
Is your work, your professional work, is it more like art that you create and it's like you and your friends going out, or are you hired by the magazines to take photos of what they tell you to take photos of?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. My career has been untraditional in the space in which I kind of did things in not the way that it was previously done before. Usually kind of rock climbing photography, a lot came out of climbers who were also photographers. And so we kind of saw the cutting edge or whatever the community that was in before. For me, photography kind of grew out of rock climbing, and I have made a career off of photographing my friends. Usually one of the pieces of advice that I give out a lot is like, go find a pro rock climber and take photos of them, because it's a great way to get recognition, to get your name around, right? To work with some of the professionals. But when I think about that in my own journey, I'm like, yeah, I didn't do that. I just took pictures of my friends and that's all I did. And we kind of do the same thing. And so, when I'm on a job, I'm on a job. And with any job, right, it's kind of a melding. It's a melding of your style with the needs of the company. And so sometimes you have to compromise a little bit in both directions to kind of make that work out for them. Any other questions?
Off of that same thread, is it hard to sell your style to the already existing aesthetic of the magazines, like to transform them into different aesthetics, or are they wanting what they already have?
It really depends on the editorial style of the magazine. Again, right, you have that push and pull, but kind of, again, untraditionally about me is that, right, a lot of the times when your work is so widely seen, people already know what you do. And so I broke into this space because I could achieve what they needed and what they're used to, right? But I could also try to push the boundaries a little bit in kind of artistic ways and style. And we try to, I try to sneak things in, and sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't, right? But especially being like a BIPOC photographer, it's all about just like, right, I kind of fit the norm and I can like fit into what they want just enough to hopefully open this door for other people who have different creative styles, and we can kind of push the bounds of what we consider rock climbing photography more and more as we get there. Did I miss any questions in the chat? Anybody had anything?
Lots of thank yous in the chat.
What is the age of the youngest climber? I mean, do kids do things like this? Because, I mean, you're an adult, so I see all your friends your age, but do young children, 10, 11, 12?
Absolutely. Rock climbing is from everybody who can stand up, depending on how you feel about that. Like, what is that? 1, right? to 99. Usually as you get older, the type of rock climbs you can do goes down, and probably your risk factor, you'll like think about that a little bit more. But really, kids love rock climbing, mainly because they like holding stuff, right? They're surprisingly strong, and their kids are really good at it because they don't have the same fear inhibitions, which can be good and bad, right? As we do. They don't have these preconceived notions of what's scary and what they should do. So they're a little bit better at using their own full bodies to really get up climbs, and they do it in a much more natural way. Whether us as adults, we kind of get into the thought process of, oh, we have to do this, we have to be strong enough to do that. Kids don't really have that. They're just gonna do it or they're not. And it's actually really cool to watch kids climbs because they'll do things in like new and surprising ways that you never really thought of.
And what's your next dream climb?
My next dream climb, currently where I live in Las Vegas, there's this one rock climb called the Fox. It is a traditional trad climb. And I would really like to complete that. So I'd like to we call it sending the climb, when you climb it from top to bottom without falling or taking on your gear. And it's probably, I've climbed that climb for 7 years now. I first climbed it when I first started climbing, and I had no idea what traditional rock climbing was or how to crack climb. And I just like huffed my way by like pulling really hard on the side of it. And then I learned to crack climb. And so now it's gotten easier and easier. But I've yet to lead it, mainly because it's just kind of really easy to set yourself up there and top rope it. And I need to get the courage back up to attempt something like that. But again, right, I'm all about hope. I would love to go to New Zealand. There are some beautiful rock climbs there. Hong Kong also has really cool rock climbs over like turquoise water, which photographically like super appeals to me. And hopefully, maybe within the next few years, as the world can kind of open back up and it's safe for us to do so, I would love to really start traveling internationally again.
Well, all the best. Thank you. All the best.
Anyone else?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
So much. That was wonderful.
It was awesome for everybody to kind of check in, and I hope it was hopefully a little inspiring for all of you. And even though you don't rock climb, you totally can, or you can just enjoy the beautiful art that comes from it.
Thank you so much. And tomorrow for Mountain Story, we have Michael Finkel talking about his book, Stranger in the Woods, about a hermit who lived for 27 years in the Maine backwoods, the ultimate social distancer. So that should be exciting too. But thank you so much. That was really awesome. And I'm thrilled to meet you. This is great. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Nice to meet you.